If you think that last video of mine about the whole Henry VIII story was long and complicated, I'm sorry, it just is. And I basically put I put a story that lasted what 13 minutes. You can make you can and it has been done. You can make mini series out of this. In fact, Showtime did. It's called The Tudors. They had 4 seasons of this, or 4 or 5, I forget what. So, but nevertheless, the key thing you have to remember here, particularly for this slide, is the fact that Henry has 3 children, right? You have Edward VI, his son, Mary the First, his eldest daughter, and finally Elizabeth I. So let's talk about the Church of England under Henry's heirs. The Church of England during the reigns of the last Tudor monarchs, Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I, are going to basically be molded into the image of its head. For example, Edward VI, even though his mother was Catholic, remember, you get your religion from your mother and your name from your father. So when I was born, my mother was Catholic, my father was Protestant. So therefore, I'm a Catholic, right? My father has since converted to Catholicism. But nevertheless, because my mother's Catholic, I was raised Catholic. So when Edward VI's mother was Catholic, but she dies. And Edward VI is basically raised by radical Protestants. So when he becomes king in 1547, he's going to try to steer the Church of England into a much more Protestant direction. He's going to get rid of a lot of things that would smack of Catholicism, right? Icons, statues, stained glass windows, these types of things that would mark a Catholic influence. He's going to get rid of them because he's a radical Protestant. The thing about him, though, is that he doesn't last very long. All right. If you notice in the slide on my slide here, right, it says right here 1547 to 1553. Not very long. In fact, he doesn't even reach his 18th birthday. There's a huge debate about what exactly was going on. Why did he die? Was he a sickly little boy? That's the traditional story. Nowadays, we're starting to hear that, no, he probably was not. He was probably actually a strong, robust kid. But nevertheless, he never reaches his 18th birthday. So he's not on the throne long enough in order to make any sort of lasting changes. He dies, and now it's Mary. And you know her as Bloody Mary, right? Great drink, by the way. But nevertheless, what is she? Well, her mother is Catherine of Aragon, right? The last child of Ferdinand and Isabella. That's pretty strong Catholic pedigree, right? She is, as radical as Edward VI was. When it comes to his Protestantism, Mary was the equal in terms of her Catholicism. She would not tolerate any Protestantism within her realm. So for her brief reign, she's only on the throne for 5 years. It's not like she's murdered or anything. She too gets sick and dies. But nevertheless, during her 5 years on the throne, she brings England back into the Catholic fold by force, even burning at the stake at least 300 heretics. That's why she gets the moniker of Bloody Mary. So Mary's a Catholic, therefore the Church of England is actually pretty much abolished and Catholicism is reinstituted. She doesn't last very long, 5 years. The one that does last a long time is Elizabeth I. And what's Elizabeth going to do? Well, Elizabeth is a moderate Protestant, so she follows the radical Protestantism of Edward and the radical Catholicism of Mary, and she is a moderate Protestant. And basically, what she's going to do is she's going to try to find this middle ground, this middle course, right? Well, pretend on this side are Catholics, and on this side are Protestants, right? Well, Elizabeth is pretty much going to be right here, right in the middle, right? And she's going to, give in a little bit to Protestant demands here, and she's going to give in a little bit of Catholic demands here. And what she's trying to do is she's trying to find a solution that would pretty much satisfy the vast majority of Englishmen, except for the most radical of Protestants and the most radical of Catholics, right? So she tries to find this middle ground, right? And that's going to be a major issue, particularly when we start getting into the foundation of the English colonies. So Elizabeth gives stability, particularly the last 20 years of her reign. The first 30 were or so were not exactly the most stable, but nevertheless, what Elizabeth is able to do is steer the Church of England to the point where it kind of looks like today, right? If you go into a Catholic church, and you sit during a Catholic Mass, and then you go to an Anglican church, or here in the United States, an Episcopalian church, and you go and you sit in one of their services or masses, you're going to look around, and you're going to say, what's the difference? I can't. It's hard to tell, and there's a reason, and one of the reasons is because Elizabeth steers this middle ground, tries to find this middle way in order to make the Church of England Protestant enough to get all but the most radical of Protestants, and Catholic enough to get all the Catholics except the most ardent Catholics to become part of the Church of England. So he's just trying to please everybody. And I know the adage, if you try to please everybody, you ultimately please nobody. Well, the fact that the Church of England has maintained this Catholic appearance suggests to me that she pleased a lot of people. But nevertheless, there are going to be people that are not going to like these changes. Most notably the Puritans and the Pilgrims. And we'll talk about that in another slide.